ABSL Summit. Transform to thrive.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. We're going to be talking a little bit about what we need to be doing to meet our KIBS ambitions. How can we really achieve all this? To get you all going, though, I want to start with a bit of a poll, just to see your thoughts. We're going to look at what are the barriers we've got to achieving those ambitions. Are those barriers skills, governance, trust, geopolitics, talent, or simply the cost of doing it? We're going to go to a Menti poll. We're going to pick your top three. So your top three from each of these. So if we can have the Menti poll up. Okay, let's close the poll. Can we have a look at the results? So we've got trust right up there. And I'm not surprised by that. It'll be interesting when we think about it, whether we believe we can be trusted, or whether it's others who are actually frightened to trust us, or thinking that by admitting trust, it's a threat to them. But let's have a look at the way our world is moving, the way things are changing, and the way that GBS has worked, and in particular the way GBS finance has worked. Very much, we started off with processing, the analysis of information, the production of basic reports. That was all we could be trusted to do. And we then moved on from that to looking at that information, producing insight from that information, starting to communicate it, and slowly moving over towards the right-hand side. I would say that our KIBS journey is complete is when we're actually creating impact on our organizations, when what we do is impacting executive decisions, is driving executive decisions. In some ways, a traditional finance role, often called decision support, I think that's really boring. So let's call it impacting decision making. That's where we want to be going. We're moving from the data to knowing why the data is doing what it is doing, to knowing how we can do things with that data. And finally, if we're impacting those executive decisions, we're actually forming solutions and we're doing. That's our journey. And there's plenty of space for us to do that. Forecasts for growth in GBS are it will grow at a compound rate of over 20% between now and 2030. GBS today worth $38 billion. 2030, $162 billion. And that assumes today's prices. So you can forget about last year's inflation and all of that in there. There is huge, huge growth there. So we're poised here for tremendous growth in that sector. But you're not going to get that just through processing and producing insight reports. So let's have a look at what we're going to be doing. As we push ourselves up the value chain, what does it require us to do? And as we move up this, you start to see different skills coming through. We're moving from efficiency and cost reduction to a different world, a world where we are starting to create value. Things like RPA, that's all part of that original automation thing. It's stuff which can be done using rules. Anything which is rules can be automated. So, what do we have to do? We have to be constantly thinking about moving left to right on this. Moving to that position where we know how, and that position where we do. Moving from reporters to value creators. Moving from scorekeepers to storytellers. That's our journey. That's where we create influence. The storytellers are the business leaders. The storytellers create visions. The storytellers create the future for our businesses. And everywhere I travel across the world, I meet GBS leaders and they're talking about how they're going to do this. Different cultures talk about it differently. Just to give you the latest thing I experienced. 8 weeks ago, I'm in Beijing meeting a CFO. He tells me that by the end of Q2 this year, which I think is in about 3.5 weeks' time from now, he is going to have all of his historic financial reporting done by AI. He's not going to lose a single staff member. He's going to refocus them, and they're all going to be focused on the future. They're all going to be focused on influencing decision-making and on storytelling. And over 65% of those people who used to just report on transactions are going to be reporting and analyzing and focusing, creating a future with information which is non-financial. We've been talking about ESG. He's going to be bundling all of that in. He's going to be talking about market information, the whole piece. Very, very powerful as he moves from left to right. So that's where we're going to be. That's where we're going to be going. We're going to be moving from areas of governance, almost like traditional areas of controlling. Finance is very good at controlling. That's why people hate finance. What finance needs to be doing is guiding. That's when finance becomes valuable. That's when finance people move from being the least popular person in the room to the most popular person in the room. I have an American colleague who says, you move from being CF no, N-O, to CF no, K-N-O-W. And that is the transformation that we make. So we move ourselves from a controlling and a governance role to a guidance role where we're telling the story of the organization's future. So when we're doing that, what do we need to think about? Well, I'm going to start with the assumption that everything on the left-hand side, which you now have shaded, we can do. And we're looking at what we're going to do on the right-hand side. Collaboration, communication, advising, and creating. What are we going to be moving towards to do that? This piece on the right is where we need to focus. If we get this right, we start to overcome that trust, and we actually shift ourselves to a position where, rather than trust being a worry, we become the trusted partner of the business. And people will come to us and say, help me, how can I do this? That's where we're going. And when we're doing this, I find the most powerful way to look at this is looking at skills. We have a T shape here. In the vertical, we have knowledge. That's what we already have. Knowledge, I would suggest to you, is becoming a commodity. It's easy. You've mastered that. We're talking about, someone outside was telling me, if we're doing stuff in Krakow in future, we've got to add the value to it. 3 years of inflation in Europe has seen off any cost arbitrage. Forget it. And earlier today, another speaker was talking about cost arbitrage is not what it's about. And that's absolutely right. But it's not just you talking about that. They're talking about that in Bangalore. They're talking about that in Manila. Everywhere. So, what makes a difference? And the difference I would allege are what are called the power skills. The power skills that enable us to solve problems. the power skills that enable us to think creatively, the power skills that enable us to support decision-making as a trusted partner. Not just as someone who produces a piece of paper and says, there you go, that's the budget. But someone who says, this is what we can do with this. We have options 1, 2, 3, and we think option 2 is the best for these reasons. That's when we start to change things. That's when we start to make a difference. If we overlay that on our journey, then you start to see where we need to go, what we need to achieve if we're going to get where we want to be on KIBS. It's about getting those power skills in. It's about deploying them. It's about demonstrating them. And then we get to the end of our journey. AI doesn't solve the power skills thing for us. You know the thing with AI? AI is like having a very knowledgeable but how would you describe it? But stupid child? AI is naive. Just outside, one of my colleagues was saying to me, I asked AI at the weekend, what's the largest city, Vienna or Warsaw? Because my son wanted to know. And of course, the answer is you can measure it in about a dozen different ways, and the answer will shift depending on what you do. But AI can't do that. AI will pick one and it'll say, Vienna's bigger than Warsaw. Or it might say, Warsaw's bigger than Vienna. And it might vary depending on which AI system you use. So you almost have to manage your AI. Quite similar to robotic processing, you had to manage your robots. Yes, it was a member of staff who didn't go sick. It was a member of staff who could work multiple hours a day more, but it still had to be supervised. You still had to understand what it was doing. AI is not going to solve your problems and ability to influence. That's the human touch. People worry, is AI going to take my job? I'm often asked, hey Andrew, is AI going to take over from accountants? The answer is, AI will take your job if you can't use AI. If you can use AI, hey, you're going to be fine, because you're going to be doing all this stuff across the top of that T. So that's our KIBS journey. And our KIBS journey is all about moving from delivering information to delivering value. It's about us being part of the business's value creation. It's becoming a part of the business which yields a return, not part of the business which is simply there as cost and needs to be managed and, if possible, reduced as an overall proportion of the business every year. But it's a part of the business which, if delivering a return, can be invested in. We saw the cost column on the Menti thing, the second highest after trust. If you're delivering value, then cost just becomes part of that value creation story. So that is what we're all about. I'm going to wrap up there. We've got a discussion group coming up in just 2 or 3 minutes. I think it's going to be fantastic. Please bear with us, and I'll see you all in a couple of seconds' time. Thank you very, very much indeed.